Go ahead and get started. We had a large crowd this morning, larger than normal. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before I get started with the presentation, I'm going to make a couple announcements. The first being we're coming up on our conference June 9th and 10th. If you haven't registered for the conference yet, you need to do so by the end of the week. That's when the pre-registration will end. You can still register for the conference after May 26th, but we can't promise that you'll have a name badge and a bag and all that stuff because we only ordered so much of that stuff, so the people that are pre-registered will get that first, and then what we have left we'll give to people that show up that weren't pre-registered. So if you need information on registering for the conference, get a hold of me. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a slide with my cell phone number and everybody's cell phone number, so if you need that, you can get that then. The deadline for getting hotel rooms, if you haven't got hotel rooms yet, is the same day, so make sure you do that as well, and I can get you that information as well. Next month's cultural presentation will be on the 12th, I believe that is, of June. I'm sorry. The 13th of June is the Tuesday night. So the 13th of June, but it will not be here. It will be at the Heritage Center at the council house inside the village, and it will be over traditional clothing. We're doing it there because we will have a group from our at-large Cherokee communities here at that time, and so that's where they're going to be, and that's where we're going to be. So we're going to do the cultural presentation at the Heritage Center in the village. So y'all are welcome to join us for that. It'll be about the same time, 5:30, 6. I'll get an exact time on that and send it out via email. Next leadership presentation will be the last Tuesday in June, which will be the 27th, and it will be over professional writing. So writing letters, fundraising letters, different things like that, how to better express yourself in writing. We had one on public speaking, so we're going to have one on professional writing as well. So that'll be 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. in here on June the 27th. I think those are all the announcements, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Brad Wagnon. I'm Technical Assistant Specialist with Cherokee Nation Community and Cultural Outreach, and we're going to be talking about managing conflict and stress tonight. I don't know what caused so many people to show up this morning. Maybe it was because they're all stressed and they really wanted to hear about that, or maybe it was because all the other things that we have going on. It's summertime, so everybody has a lot of things going on, so that's probably the reason for our small crowd this evening. But we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go over our agenda. Welcome and introductions, we already did that. We're going to go over our learning goals. We're going to have an icebreaker on what causes conflict, and then we're going to go into our presentation. Conflict 101, resolving conflict. We'll have a little video, and then we're going to go into talking about managing stress, and then our closing circle. So just the ground rules for all of our presentations: be respectful. Wait your turn to speak. Won't have to wait too long tonight. Observe time frames. That's more for me to observe the time limit. I will get you guys out of here way before our 2-hour time limit tonight. We'll probably only go an hour, 15 minutes, or an hour and a half tonight. We won't go the whole 2 hours. No solicitation. Don't be trying to sell stuff. If you want to sell stuff, sell it after we get out of here. Cell phones on vibrate or silent. No wrong answers, and have fun. So we're going to go into our learning goals. After the end of this training, participants will understand what causes conflict and have strategies to resolve conflict. They will also build conflict resolution skills and understand how to deal with stress. So those are our learning goals. So a little bit of an icebreaker. And this icebreaker involves what we're actually talking about tonight, which is conflict. And we're going to go over these individually and talk about different places where we have conflict. I Over the past few months, we've kind of switched gears of our leadership trainings. Last couple years, we've been talking about organizational leadership, how to run an organization, board meetings, all that sort of thing. This year, we're going more into personal growth type things. So we're going to start with a personal question. What causes conflict in your home? You just yell it out to me. In your home, what causes conflict? Not picking up after themselves? What else? We got some younger people here, which we don't always have the privilege of having. What causes conflict in your house?
Well, it's not mostly you, it's the boys taking your clothes without permission.
Oh, taking other people's things without permission? That can cause conflict. What else?
I'm the only one in the house.
Not much conflict. Nobody else. Conflict with yourself, huh?
Disagree with myself.
What else causes conflict in our homes? Lack of communication. That's the number one thing. That's the number one answer for all of these is lack of communication. So what about at work? What causes conflict? The folks, those of you that work, what causes conflicts at work, in a workplace? Crazy cows. You get in conflict with the cows? Oh, yeah. Not everybody has the same ideas of how to do things, right? What else? Teamwork, yeah. Work ethic. When somebody feels like maybe they have a little bit bigger workload than somebody else, does that cause conflict? Yeah. What about in the organizations that y'all are a part of? What causes conflict? Everybody gets along in your organizations? That was not people not showing up. Yep, people not doing their part. Yeah. Negative. Yeah, that was not the case this morning. They had all sorts of things this morning that caused. Somebody said, like you, Linda, that they were the only person in their house and they were retired, so the only conflict they had was within their organization. So we have all sorts of ideas about what causes conflict in different places. So tonight we're going to talk about the very deepest bottom line that causes all conflict. That's what we're going to get started with. Conflict 101. Conflicts ultimately arise from differing needs. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about needs versus wants here in a minute, but conflicts ultimately arise when people have or think they have different needs. And conflicts often trigger deep personal feelings that arise from deep personal needs. At the bottom of every conflict are two people or more that feel strongly about something, right? If you didn't feel strongly about it, there wouldn't be any need to have a conflict. And those needs, the feelings those people have, are in opposition to one another. Conflict is more than just a disagreement. This is where we're going to talk about needs versus wants. You can have a disagreement over all sorts of things, right? Where to eat. I mean, a good example of a need versus want is, say, you're with your friend and they want to eat at Del Rancho, okay? But you want to eat at Charlie's Chicken, we'll just say. You both want to eat two different places. You both need to eat, right? So it's not worth having a conflict. You might have a disagreement over where to eat, but ultimately you're going to settle on one place or the other, or someplace completely different as a compromise, right? That's not really a conflict. A conflict is where two people or more have needs that are in opposition to each other. The other thing about conflicts that's different from disagreements is that conflicts continue to fester when they are ignored. A disagreement you can have and agree to disagree. A conflict, there actually has to be some sort of resolution that meets the needs of both parties in order for that conflict to really be resolved. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that idea of having to win or be right and how that really doesn't resolve a lot of conflicts. If those people are still going to have a relationship with one another, whether it's a friend, whether it's a husband, wife, whether it's a business relationship, if one person is always the winner and always gets what they want and there's no compromise, then that conflict is never really resolved. We respond to conflicts based on our perceptions of how we perceive conflict. If you've had a bad experience with conflict, you've had a conflict that's ended badly for you, then you're most likely going to perceive conflict as a bad thing. If you've had a conflict that's been resolved and it's caused growth in your personal life or in your organization or at work, then you're probably going to perceive conflict as maybe a good thing, as a way to grow. Conflicts are an opportunity for growth, ultimately. And remember that conflict arises because both parties have conflicting but legitimate needs. Legitimate is the key word there. Whether or not the other person's need is legitimate to you, it's legitimate to them, right? So until we see that everyone's needs in a conflict are legitimate needs, then we won't truly resolve that conflict. So we talked about conflict being part of your how you perceive it. So do you perceive conflict as painful, dangerous, an opportunity, or something that's healthy? Or something, do you perceive it as something completely different? Somebody this morning said they perceive conflict as stressful. Something that causes stress, and they don't like to be stressed. We're going to talk about not being stressed in the second half of this presentation. But how do you perceive conflict? In order to resolve a conflict, you must understand your own needs. This is where we get into this thing of people who either don't know what they need or like to have conflict just to have a conflict. There are people that thrive on conflict. So in order to actually resolve a conflict, you need to know what you need to get out of it, right? What would resolve this conflict for you? If you can't answer that question when somebody else asks you, there's no way that you're going to be able to resolve that conflict. So you need to know about you and what you need if you're going to resolve a conflict. The ability to successfully resolve conflict depends on your ability to manage stress quickly while remaining alert and calm. And we're going to talk about managing stress here in just a little bit. Control your emotions and behavior. Have you ever been in a conflict with someone that immediately starts yelling when you get into conflict with them? Not very easy to resolve a conflict with that person. Or someone who starts crying when you try to have a discussion with them. Not very easy to resolve that conflict. Those sorts of emotional and those sorts of emotional responses tend to prolong conflict instead of helping it be resolved. So you have to be able to manage your stress, manage your emotions, and pay attention to not only what the person's saying, but the feelings that are being expressed. Not a lot of people like to hear this, but in order to resolve a conflict with another person, you have to pay attention to that other person. Not only what they're saying, but the feelings that are being expressed. And you have to be aware and respectful of differences. So some healthy responses to conflict. Recognizing and responding to things that matter to the other person. Calm, non-defensive, and respectful actions. Readiness to forgive and forget. How good are we at that? We can forgive people a lot. It's harder to forget, right? It's harder to forget.
As the body gets older, though, it's easy to forget.
Yeah, it is easier to forget things. Sometimes we remember just the things we don't want to remember, though, right? The ability to seek compromise and avoid punishing. That goes along with forgiving and forgetting. If you truly want to resolve a conflict, then you can't punish somebody for the outcome 3 months down the road, right? Then it's not resolved. You're bringing that back up. Belief that facing conflict head on is best for both sides. How many people avoid conflict at all cost? I do. I avoid conflict. So I don't have. That's not a healthy thing to do. That's not a healthy thing to do for you mainly. It causes stress. It causes all sorts of things. So in order to respond to conflict in a healthy way, you need to first believe that you need to respond to conflict at all. How do I avoid conflict? I just do. Yeah, I ignore it, and I just listen to what the other person wants, and do it. I mean, it's sometimes it's easier for me to just go ahead and go with the flow. Yeah. Compromise a lot, but there's got to be a give and take for that compromise, because it ends up, if you keep avoiding it, it ends up coming back up, basically. So managing and resolving conflict. Like I said earlier, listen to what is felt as well as said. Make resolution the priority, not winning or being right. Like I said, I probably take that to an extreme. I want it to be resolved quickly, so I will give in more to what other people want just because I want it to be over with, right? And a lot of people do that. So there's a balance there. There's those people that always want to win, always want to be right. Then there's those people that always compromise. And when you get those people together, one person always ends up winning, and that's hard. And we're going to talk. Well, here in just a minute, we'll talk about picking your battles. Focus on the present. Don't focus on past conflicts. Pick your battles. Now, there are certain things that I will have conflict over, and you have to choose what those things are. And those things are usually those things that are your beliefs at your core beliefs. You won't compromise on certain things. So pick your battles. Don't be one of those people that thrives on conflict, basically. Be willing to forgive and know when to let something go. All right. I got a video for you. It's a few minutes long here, but it's funny. It's about conflict and how to resolve it. There it is. All right, so I'm getting back to my slideshow here. There it is. What can we learn from that video about conflict? Right. Learn how to compromise. Conflict can keep people from moving forward, right? If they don't compromise, can fall into some water. What else? Can conflict distract us from other things? Conflict can, if we let conflict go on and don't compromise, it can distract us from everything else, so they didn't even see those other animals chewing on the ropes until they heard one snap, right? They were so engrossed in their own conflict that they didn't see what was happening around them. So we got to learn to compromise is the main thing out of that video. I don't know if the moose and the bear could have hopped over one another. I don't think they could, but when I first started watching that video, I thought, well, surely, they'll grab hands and like walk sideways, and hold each other up. I mean, that's a compromise, right? But they didn't do that, so they didn't make it. All right, we're going to move into our portion on managing stress. Stress is a big issue these days, right? Most people today operate on some level of stress all the time. A little bit of stress is probably good for some people. If you're too laid back or something, you're not worried or stressed about anything, that can become a problem, especially if you're, have a job. You can, a little bit of stress at your job probably motivates some people, but these days most people are way above what their stress level should be. So we're going to talk about all these things in depth, but we're just going to go over them real quick here. So the steps to managing stress are to recognize when you're stressed or that you were stressed. That's the first thing, right? Identify your stress response, how you respond to stress. Use your senses to relieve stress. That's the method that we're going to talk about tonight. There's all sorts of ways to relieve stress, but we're going to talk about using your senses. And look for sensory inspiration. We're going to talk about what that is as well. Make quick stress relief a habit. When you recognize your stress, make it a habit to de-stress yourself or you're overstressed. Practice wherever you are. So we're going to talk about recognizing when you're stressed. Many of us are stressed so much of the time that we've forgotten what it feels like to be in balance. I told this story this morning, and I didn't realize until this how stressed I really had become. I had a chance to go visit some family a couple of weeks ago, and we went out riding four-wheelers, is what we call them here. It was in California. They call them quads. I don't know what that's all about. But so we went out riding. They have some property up on a mountain in Northern California. So we went out riding. We rode all over their property for hours on four-wheelers. And it didn't take me very long, maybe 5 minutes into it, to think, man, I feel good. I'm not worried about anything, and I actually stopped my four-wheeler and thought, man, this feels nice to not have to worry about work or anything like that. I was up there basically on the mountain by myself. My cousins were up ahead of me, but it felt really good. So some of us have forgotten what that feels like to not be stressed. So we need to recognize that we are stressed and recognize what stress does to our body, does to our physical health. Stress can do all sorts of weird things to your body. So you need to listen to your body. You need to observe your muscles, observe your insides. Are your shoulders tight? Are your muscles tight? Is your chest tight? Is your stomach upset all the time? It may be caused by stress. You need to listen to your body, observe your muscles, and observe your breath. Is your breathing real shallow? Are you taking deep breaths? Your body can actually have a lot of toxins in it if you don't breathe deeply enough. Your lungs actually can hold all sorts of crazy things. And breathing deeply and fully can help expel some of those things. So it can actually make you feel better physically to de-stress and to use those breathing methods. One of them that somebody has told me is like 7, 8, 9. You breathe in for 7 seconds, hold it for 8 seconds, and then breathe out for 9 seconds. And then you stop. You don't breathe for a few seconds. And it's in that time that you're not breathing that you can actually feel and hear what your body is doing. And that works a lot for people with anxiety. You can kind of calm yourself down. You can actually slow your heart rate down, different things, just by controlling your breathing. And so observe your body and observe how stress is affecting you to know if you need to manage that stress, if you're too stressed. Identify how you respond to stress. There's internal stress responses, how you're feeling on the inside, and then there's external stress responses. The external stress responses are what everybody else sees, right? Some people are really good at controlling their external stress response. They can be really, really stressed out on the inside and look like they're calm on the outside, right? Some people are overexcited on the outside. That looks different for everybody else. For everybody, can be, sweating, can be, visible trembling or shaking. It can be crying, can be yelling, it can be all sorts of things, but getting over excited about being stressed or about what's stressing you. There's a lot of folks that are under excited. Those are the people that kind of withdraw from everybody else. If they're stressed, they just remove themselves from the situation. Then there's immobilization or frozen. They're in the situation, but they can't do anything. They can't say anything. They're just so stressed that they're frozen. So these are all responses, not necessarily healthy responses to stress. And then there's, the balanced response to stress, which is where we all hope that we can get. So using your senses to relieve stress. This is just the method that we're going to talk about tonight. There's all different ways for all different sorts of people to relieve stress, but most of them rely on one of your senses. Sight. What's an example of something using sight that you could use to relieve stress? Nature. You can just get out and in nature and look. What else? Maybe looking at a picture of your family. That might stress some people out, but it depends on if your family de-stresses you or stresses you. Yeah. Looking at a picture of your family, looking at artwork, different things like that. That might be an example of using sight. Smell. What's one thing that you could do using smell to relieve stress?
I know it sounds crazy, but like fresh cut grass, I'm like, I can walk outside and just like just deep there.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that here in just a minute. That's using that sensory inspiration, using something that is familiar, a smell, a sight, a sound that's familiar to you, that you've found that de-stresses you. A lot of people use incense, air fresheners, different things. They sell all kinds of stuff. There's a whole industry, of sprays and things that you can spray that are supposed to be stress relief, right? Yeah. But just something, like you said, as easy as going out and smelling something. Some people, maybe it's the smell of fresh baked bread or something. There's different smells. You just got to find what that is that relaxes you. Touch. A dog. That's probably the number one answer for touch is a pet. I prefer a hug from a person, especially a person that doesn't like hugs, because then you're their response. That de-stresses you too, because you get to laugh. Yeah, they're very stressed, huh? Yeah. Pets is probably the number one answer, but touch, it can be anything from petting a dog or a cat or some other sort of animal. It can be a hug. It can be, don't think about just your fingers. It could be, the feel of your bed when you lay down in it. I mean, it could be all those sorts of things. So you can use all those sorts of things. Taste. This is probably one that I use way too much. Chocolate. I'm real bad about candy. If I've had a particularly stressful day, or if I haven't, I might go get some candy and something that is familiar to you that relieves some of that stress. Movement. This one's probably more healthy than taste. Walking, running, exercising, dancing, all those sorts of things for different people can relieve stress. Is that yours, Dorothy? Dancing? Yeah. Any type of movement. Some people do martial arts, Tai Chi, different things, that yoga that relax the body and the mind. So that's examples of movement. Sound. Music. Music is the number one answer, is what most people say when they think of using sound to relieve stress. If you're going to use music, though, to relieve stress, especially if you're at work, I would recommend headphones. Because not everybody is de-stressed by listening to your music like you are. And then this one was a new one for me. In fact, this morning I really still didn't understand what they were talking about when they said vocal toning. And so somebody that was in here actually looked it up or asked somebody. It's actually, now you probably want to be by yourself when you do this, but it's actually using your own voice, your own vocal cords to find a tone that's pleasing to you. Like I said, you might want to be by yourself. You might get some strange looks if you're doing vocal toning in a. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it is. A lot of people use it. I mean, there's people that use it for meditation. There's people that use it for religious purposes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what it is. It's vocal toning is what that's called, and that relaxes some people, relieves their stress. You just like the sound of your own voice, right?
It's not yelling.
Yeah, singing in the shower. Hey. Yes, Dorothy.
Find a word that you can't pronounce. Put a pencil in your mouth, go to the mirror, and try to say that word. That's what that is right there.
Is it? Find a word you can't pronounce, put a pencil in your mouth, go to the mirror,
Then try to go to the mirror and try to say it.
try to say the word. Look for sensory inspiration. Now this is going beyond your present senses and going back to things like memories, imagination, everything like that. If you can think back to a good memory, that relieves some people's stress. Observation. What's an example of using observation to relieve stress? I had some good ones this morning. Kids playing. People watching. Yeah. Go in the mall. Go to Walmart. Sit and watch. That's it. That's observation. Has anybody ever looked at this was somebody's this morning. Has anybody ever looked at the clouds and just watched?
We actually painted her, when we did her bedroom when she was little, they always cloud watch and find pictures, and so we actually take clouds.
Yeah.
Her, and made actually picture of
Yeah. I was this morning actually. I was trying not to be stressed about giving this presentation. So as I was driving, I noticed all the different kinds of birds. I mean, watching things in nature is another form of observation. Your parents. Now this can be stressful or not stressful, but what this means, what we're trying to get across here, is think about things that your parents did to de-stress, to relieve stress, or your parents still do. What was that? What'd you say?
She said, I think my parents still have to find it.
Oh, they still haven't found it yet? My parents read a lot. I always remember my mom and dad reading before they went to bed to, get rid of all the thoughts of the day and get yourself into a book. And so I got that from them. I like to read a lot to de-stress. So that's an example of parents. Your imagination. The cloud thing can be imagination, like if you're saying you see this or that in the clouds, that can be imagination as well. Somebody this morning said, they like to look at the shapes of like buildings and different things and make other things out of them. So that's using your imagination to relieve stress. Okay, here's one that's probably controversial, especially for younger folks. Take a break from technology. This might stress younger people out to take a break from technology. Older people probably won't. I am in that in-between era of people. I still remember rotary phones and the big, huge TVs, and we had a lady this morning that said, I've been through all sorts of technology. I went from having, the huge tube radios to black and white TVs to color TVs, all the way to these, super ultra thin TVs. And somebody made the comment, what do young people today, as far as technology, what do they have to look forward to? How much more can we do certain things with technology? But really, taking a break from technology can help a lot of people de-stress. Some people need to feel that connectedness all the time. I will admit that when I'm in an area with no service or I forget my phone, it kind of stresses me out. But sometimes it doesn't stress me out. Sometimes it actually helps me to relax. So taking a break from technology can also be, if you take a break from technology, you have to find other things to do, basically. So that's why this is in there with the sensory inspiration. You want to make a habit out of this, out of relieving your stress quickly so that it doesn't have negative effects on your attitude, negative effects on your body. So you make a habit out of recognizing that you're stressed and relieving that stress quickly. Start small. Don't try to use all these things. Don't try to use, don't look at a funny picture and light a candle and eat a loaf of bread and, all these things at once. But to find one thing that you can do that helps you relieve stress and make a habit out of doing that one thing. One of the advantages of technology is that we all have, well, not all of us, but most of us probably have pictures and music and different things on our phone. There's YouTube videos over just about everything. There's those guided meditation ones are really good because the people that are usually doing them have real soothing voices. So if you find a person that has a really soothing voice that you like, and they also do the whole memory thing. A lot of them will say, go back to a place that you feel, or imagine a place where you feel safe. For some people, that's their house today. Some people, it might be their grandparents' house. So those hit on a lot of different things. So find one thing that really helps you relieve stress. Test drive the sensory input, the observation, the imagination, those different things, and have fun with it. And talk about it. If you find something that really helps you de-stress, tell somebody about it. It might help them out too. Practice wherever you are. At home, like this lady is. At work, I took this picture of Chris working in his office a couple weeks ago. I can say that because he's not here. He might be watching though. Hey, Chris. Or on the go, like these kids are taking a vacation. So wherever you are, try to use some of these things to de-stress. This is where I got a lot of the information. Man, I'm way ahead of schedule. This is where I got a lot of the information for this presentation. Just a couple different articles on the internet. I'm going to skip this. We're going to do this at the very end. I'm going to skip ahead to this right here. This is online, people only. There's a link here for the evaluation. If you're watching online, there's the link. And that's how you get credit hours. Those of you that are here with us, you get credit hours when you signed in. Just make sure you signed in under your organization. And here's that slide that I promised that has our cell phone numbers on it. If you need to get in contact with any of us, Patty is our newest technical assistant specialist. Her number's there on the bottom. Me and Chris are there. Put Tammy and Rob on there in case you want to brag on any of us or complain about any of us. There's several other people that help put these things on. Mary is out there. Donna helps us a lot with ordering, but there's not really a whole lot of reason for you guys to have to get a hold of them. They mainly help support us in what we do. So there's our numbers if you need to get a hold of us.
Brad, what was that? Oh, yeah, that right
that right there. Yep. And this should also be in the description of the video on YouTube, that link there. If it's not, we'll get it put on there.
We're gonna start showing these at our monthly meetings
Yep.
afterwards.
Yep. This one will be a good one to show because it's short. All right. We're going to end the way that we always end, which is with our closing circle. And I basically just want to hear, it's a little bit different since we're talking about personal growth. So you can pretty much share anything that you learned. I know the question says share something that you can take back to your organization. But tonight is a little bit more of a personal topic, so you can share anything that you learned with us. And we're going to start over here with Linda.
Why don't we start over there?
Why don't we start over there? We can come back to you. We'll start with Susie.
Well, I like the little slide where you had a bunch of things, but I remember the conflict is an opportunity for growth.
Yep, conflict
So
is an
if I look at
opportunity
it
for
that
growth.
way, then maybe I can go ahead and say what I need to say.
Yep.
Nicely.
Yep, nicely.
I'm nice.
Yeah, yeah. That's also on there. Control your emotions and your behavior. That's a key. Dorothy,
Well, I'm just about with her. I'm nice too.
you're nice too.
No, I just like just about everything that people does, and I just follow them and just fall in. So
Yeah. You don't have too many conflicts then, huh?
I don't think so.
I thought of that thing.
You thought of something, Linda?
I'm glad you said managing and not doing away with.
Right.
Yeah, it's never going to go away.
Right. We're always going to have conflict. We're always going to have
Healthy
stress.
ways to manage
Right. Have to
things that
manage it.
And one day, something may really bug you, and the next day, it doesn't at all, so.
Yeah. Yep. Is it Emily?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably learning how to compromise with people, like better communication and agreeing with each other. I think that's where most of my conflict comes from.
Yeah. So compromise. There's usually two, maybe three different kinds of people when it comes to conflict. There's those people that need to learn maybe to have a little bit more conflict and broach some of the subjects that need to be broached. Then there's those people that probably need to have a little bit less conflict. And then most people are probably in the middle. They just need to learn how to deal with conflict just a little bit better, more compromise. What's your name?
Haley.
Haley. All right.
Probably finding something that de-stresses you.
Yep.
Like trying to focus on that and do that at least like once a day or whenever you feel like you're getting
Yep.
going to de-stress.
So finding that one thing that
Yeah.
helps you de-stress. And what's your name?
Teresa.
Teresa. It's Bradford, right?
Yes.
I've seen y'all's names, several times, but
Mine is just, I hate conflict, so I will take on more work or just to avoid, and I need to learn how to, because like you said, it's always gonna be there that, I'm taking on more to avoid it.
Right.
At the same time, I'm like getting more stressed.
yeah. So don't avoid.
Yeah.
Don't avoid it because it's going to come back one way or the other, whether it's having a conflict again with that person or those people, or it's going to come back as stress
Yeah. Yes.
in your life. Are you the same place, Dana?
We're exactly. And they, just for managing and resolving conflict.
Yeah. Linda?
Well, I'm a very reactionary person, and I'm a problem solver. And both of those sometimes get me in a lot of stress. And I think that what I'm learning is all of that, and that take a step back. I'm learning how to say, let me think about that for a
Yeah.
moment. Or, do you mind if I tell you tomorrow?
Yeah.
Instead of reacting and solving.
Okay. So maybe removing yourself from that for just a minute, and so you can think. Yeah. That's a good point. And that's conflict. It just says to deal with conflict. It doesn't say deal with it immediately. You know, it just says deal with it. If you need a minute or an hour or a day to think about it, I'm one of those people too. I'm a person that needs time to think about things so that I'm not, you know, just reacting to what other people have said or done. Yeah. Tina?
I'm one of those that kind of just go with it, let them have their way and all that, so probably need to work on that.
Work on actually having those conflicts that need to be had. All right. Well, I told you an hour and 15 minutes, and it's probably going to be more like an hour here. So that's good. Get everybody home early. Chris will be on my case, because next time when he goes for 2 hours and 15 minutes, it'll be he can do that. Yeah. He can do that. So, all right. If nobody has anything else, y'all are free to go. If you have questions, concerns, anything like that, we'll be around here for a while, picking up, cleaning up. So just come and see us.